Stella here. Today I'm gonna gaze at the history of shoegaze. Shoegaze is characterized by a mix of obscure vocals, layers of reverberating guitars, textural distortion, and lots of feedback and effects. Shoegaze is largely about exploring the outer limits of guitar texture, and emotionally shoegaze turns its focus inward. It's music to dream, to feel, and not to analyze. In the early 60s, the producer Phil Spector developed the wall of sound recording technique by featuring multiple instruments and numerous overdubs, notably in the song Be My Baby by the Ronettes. The intro of the song, Just Like Honey by the Gigi's Mary Chain, was largely inspired by the song Be My Baby by the Ronettes. Phil Spector's wall of sound technique has greatly influenced Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, the Velvet Underground, Brian Eno, Cocteau Twins, the Gigi's Mary Chain, and Spiritualized. The Gigi's and Mary Chain have many songs reimagining the 60s bubblegum pop, drowned in feedback. The Velvet Underground's second album, White Lies, White Heat, released in 1968, explores the art of noisy guitar distortion, which is also a major characteristic of shoegaze. The Kings and the Beatles also explored heavy guitar distortion in the 60s. In the early 70s, the German krautrock outfit Faust features the overwhelming repetitive droning birds, yet somehow meditative and otherworldly. And Brian Eno added some glam and liveliness with a dance rush of guitars and effects. And a more dreamy sensation would later appear on David Bowie's song, Heroes, which Brian Eno co-wrote. A more subtle influence on shoegaze is punk and post-punk. Bands like The Stooges, Ramones, Wile, Susie and the Benches, Joy Division, The Cure, and The Chameleons. In 1996, representative shoegaze bands Lush and My Bloody Valentine made cover of the British punk band Wile, which are included in the album Whore. Various artists play Wile. I always like Wile. If you actually listen to the original record and hours, we copy the original arrangement. The band name Slowdive is actually from a song of the Susie and the Benches. Many shoegaze bands grew up listening to the bands mentioned above. However, two bands of the 80s, Cocteau Twins and the Gigi's Mary Chain, set the blueprint for the future shoegaze. Formed in Scotland in 1979, Cocteau Twins drew inspiration from Susie and the Benches, The Birthday Party, and Bauhaus. Robin Guthrie's atmospheric guitar excursions and Elizabeth Fraser's ethereal, reverb-drenched vocals setting the shoegaze aesthetic direction of sublime, dreamy, and otherworldly, which would later greatly influence shoegaze acts such as Slowdive, Ride, and Lush.
Why are people so excited about you?
Because we're so good.
Is that so?
Because we're so much better than everybody else. Because so many other people are complete rubbish that people have got to pay attention to us. It's pretty obvious, really.
Formed in 1983 by brothers Gene and William Reed, The Jesus and Mary Chain embraced both the overwhelming abrasive noise and the kind of puppy love trip-hop sensibilities.
What do you know about the Jesus and Mary Chain?
Well, the next big thing, the flavour of the month.
Flavour of the month.
Yeah,
They're damn noisy.
All the press say so.
What's so good about them?
Well,
They're noisy.
In their debut album Psycho Candy from 1985, they sound just like honey.
Just like
The Jesus and Mary Chain's sweet euphoria and psychedelic days could also be heard in the later shoegaze. The drummer of the album Psycho Candy, Bobby Gillespie, is also the vocalist of Primal Scream. The 80s American alternative rock bands such as Sonic Youth, Husker Du, Dinosaur Jr. are pivotal in the development of shoegaze and have an impact on My Bloody Valentine, Ride, Surf Driver, and well, almost every alternative band in the 90s. These bands' use of guitar distortion and noise walls set the direct link to My Bloody Valentine's and You Made Me Realize EP. For example, Dinosaur Jr.'s album You Are Living All Over Me from 1987.
We're happily influenced on that record by Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. and we were happily just sort of showing all the things we loved, you know.
The guitarist of Sonic Youth, Thurston Moore, whose guitar playing has greatly influenced Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine. And Husker Du, a hardcore punk band that I really like personally. In 1986, the English psychedelic space rock group Spaceman 3 released their debut album Sound of Confusion, featuring lengthy, noisy drums, heavily distorted guitar, and minimalist repetition. One of Spaceman 3's album is titled as Taking Drugs to Make Music to Take Drugs To, which is also the band's motto. Though not really a shoegaze group, Spaceman 3 are revolutionary and have a lasting impact on My Bloody Valentine, Galaxy 500, and thousands of psychedelic rock bands coming after. One of the founding members of Spaceman 3, Jason Pierce, later went on to form another space rock band called Spiritualized. Another English psychedelic group of the 80s are Loop, formed in 1986. Volume was important. When it gets above a certain level, all those frequencies create a symphony. I wanted that all the time. We gained a reputation very early on for either having venues closed down due to noise, or just breaking the PA. The old person will still come up to me and tell me that Loop were responsible for their partial hearing loss. In March 2022 this year, Loop released their first studio album in 31 years, called Solency, and I'll link in the description where you can hear and buy the record. But it's not an affiliated link or something like that, by the way. By the way, if you like this video so far, why not give a like button down below? Thanks. Born in 1983 in Dublin, Ireland, My Bloody Valentine are perhaps the most influential shoegaze bands. But My Bloody Valentine have not always sounded like My Bloody Valentine. In 1985, My Bloody Valentine released a debut mini-album, This Is Your My Bloody Valentine, with influences of The Birthday Party, The Cramps, and Joy Division. In 1986, My Bloody Valentine released the EP, the new record by My Bloody Valentine, with obvious influences of the Jesus and Mary Chain and C86 indie pop, poppier, jangly, and a bit twee. In March 1987, the original vocalist of My Bloody Valentine, David Conway, left the band. Shortly after, Belinda Butcher joined My Bloody Valentine as a new vocalist and guitarist. In the same year, My Bloody Valentine released the single Strawberry Wine on their Lazy Records, featuring Belinda Butcher's soft, sensual vocal. At this point, My Bloody Valentine was still mostly a noise pop band. However, in 1988 came a turning point to My Bloody Valentine and the history of shoegaze. In January 1988, My Bloody Valentine signed to Creation Records. The founder of Creation Records, Alan McGee, described My Bloody Valentine as the Irish equivalent of Husker Du, blending melodies and noise. In 2016, Peter Camber of Spaceman 3 wrote an article for Pitchfork, served as the preface of the list of the 50 best shoegaze albums of all time. It's a pretty good article, and I must say that Peter Camber is a great writer. I hope he could write some kind of memoir or autobiography one day. I'll link in the description to this article. He wrote that, while there is some truth to the saying that, Spaceman 3 being the godfather of shoegaze, it was My Bloody Valentine that held the alpha DNA. He also wrote that one song marked the birth of shoegaze, and that song was My Bloody Valentine's You Made Me Realize. In August 1988, My Bloody Valentine released the EP, You Made Me Realize, which witnessed the change of their sound. In this EP, we could hear the My Bloody Valentine that we are more familiar with. It is the beginning of their legendary path and the birth of shoegaze. But what exactly propelled the change of their sound? Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine said, "The record I made before I smoked pot was Sunny Sunday Smile. Then I smoked pot for 6 months. I made the You Made Me Realize EP." American hip-hop also had an impact on My Bloody Valentine. For example, the half-muted, semi-decayed sample sounds of Public Enemy has influenced Kevin Shields' experimentation of guitar tone. Kevin Shields' signature guitar sound was from a Fender Jazzmaster, which is also the one that J Mascis of Dinosaur Jr. uses. Kevin Shields used the Jazzmaster tremolo on to create a glide sound.
And it was the shape, the shape, because I wanted that shape, but I I actually had seen a Jazzmaster in Ireland, until 88. And it just happened that the tremolo one was set. Some of them they can all be a bit different, but his one was just set that it was kind of unusually high, just by pure luck. And I picked it up and started to kind of go, well, this is cool, And literally, the first song I ever did using it was a song from the Made Me Realize EP called Thorn.
My Bloody Valentine famously, or infamously, play really loud shows, aiming to offer the audience a kind of sensory high.
That whole volume extreme thing, at a certain point, your brainwave changes to more around 7 hertz, and that basically creates a trance state. The first time we did it, we just did it for an hour, and at the end of the hour, we were laughing hysterically. We were like little kids. We were just high, and so we wanted people to experience that. But then, of course, 1/3 of the audience is left by that point, really angrily.
On November 1988, My Bloody Valentine released a debut studio album, Isn't Anything, reaching number 1 on UK independent album charts. Isn't Anything captures My Bloody Valentine's revolutionary style in its infancy and points the way to another even better record, which will be featured later. Rudy Tambella of the overlooked British music duo, A.R. Kane, once said, "My Bloody Valentine were a jangly indie band until we put out Baby Milk Snatcher. Suddenly, they slowed it all down and layered it with feedback, and they did it better than us, which was interesting." More than shoegaze, A.R. King are also a progenitor of trip-hop, ambient dub, and post-rock. They self-describe their music as dream pop, which is also how the term was invented. During the late 80s and early 90s, many representative shoegaze bands were born, with the direct or indirect influence of Cocteau Twins, the Jesus and Mary Chain, Spaceman 3, and My Bloody Valentine's You Made Me Realize EP, and the album Isn't Anything. It's a lot about the pedals, effects that could take the Mickey's guitar and make it roar like a doorman on steroids, or soar like jet planes in an aerobatics display, creating sounds you could actually taste and smell. The term shoegaze was invented by the British magazine New Music Express to describe the band Moose singer Russell Yates, having his eyes fixed on the floor the whole time while performing, supposedly to look at his lyric sheets. It is later used as to describe the band's habit of standing relatively motionless during performances while concentrating on the numerous pedals at their feet. Shoegaze was a slightly derogatory term, and many shoegaze bands didn't really like it. Another British music magazine, Melody Maker, preferred calling the shoegaze scene as the scene that celebrates itself, because the bands were supportive of each other and then commonly attended each other's shows or joined each other on stage, contrary to the traditional rivalry scene. Shoegaze performers usually don't feel the need to be performative.
I don't see what we do as a kind of big performance thing. You know, people like expect you to sort of, I don't know, be a kind of big performing person. I mean, what's important to us is, you know, is the music, and hopefully, you know, I like to think that what's important at the gig is what's coming out of the PA speakers, not, you know, I mean, don't expect, you know, it's kind of like jumping around and stuff, you know.
You know, we just want to be natural. It's like asking the Happy Mondays to stand still when they're performing. It's not natural for them.
On 27th July 1991, a shoegaze festival named Slough Music Festival was held in England, a festival that is often described as the shoegaze Woodstock nowadays. The headline of the festival were Ride, formed in 1988 in Oxford, UK.
Ride were a fantastic band, actually. I mean, probably of all of them, around for that short period from like sort of 90, 91, 92, 93, they were my favourite band. I mean, one of my favourite bands of all time. Live, they were absolutely brilliant.
Introduced by Jim Reed of the Jesus Mary Chain to Alan McGee, Ride signed to Creation Records in 1989 and released their debut album, Nowhere, in 1990. The song Vapor Trail remains a shoegaze classic and is also one of my favorite songs of all time, not just shoegaze. You are the vapor trail in a deep blue sky. La, 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 la. Vapor Trail's shimmering guitar, pop melodies, and teenagey lyrics remind us of the Byrds and the Stone Roses. But what makes Vapor Trail great is its sun-soaked melancholy that leaves us in lament, while the song only lasts 4.5 minutes. The cover of the album Nowhere is swirling sea waves reaching its crest in the middle, and then gradually falling down. The song Dream Burns Down is basically repeating the sonic waves as presented on the album cover. Ride's powerful and almost manic drumming by Lawrence Covert is like the ruthless and fierce sea waves that might take your life. And then the waves gently fall down. Repeat until the song ends in cadence. On 4th November 1991, My Bloody Valentine released their second studio album, Loveless, 6 weeks after Nirvana's Nevermind. The history of shoegaze is forever changed by My Bloody Valentine again. Loveless took 3 years, 19 different studios, and 45 engineers, countless weeds, and $250,000 to make, which led Creation Records into almost bankrupt. Regarding Loveless, Adam McGee of Creation Records and Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine seem to still haven't reconciled.
Loveless is just fucking overrated, man, you know, at the end of the day. I put it out. It's fucking overrated as fuck.
He remembers it, and plus he was a massive cokehead. So he was totally on drugs and couldn't control it, and everyone liked it. And so his emotional scar from that is huge.
However, to this day, Loveless is widely praised as a masterpiece and is rated as 73rd among Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time and second best album of the 90s by Pitchfork. Loveless is a combination of masculinity and femininity, of noisy upheaval and soft whispery vocals, of defiance and vulnerability. Kevin Shields is almost like a mad scientist. His perfectionism explores the delicate beauty in the texture of sounds. Few indie albums make us want to investigate the nuance in details like Loveless. Personally, I found Loveless really intimate and kind of cinematic. The lyrics are simple but sensual, describing how a fleeting moment in your life makes you feel. Loveless is the pinnacle of shoegaze. Loveless defines shoegaze. It has also greatly influenced Radiohead, Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, and Mogwai. Kevin Shields had even taught me to be more patient. When I'm working on this video, I thought of Kevin Shields several times because the workload is nowhere as much as what he had. Formed in 1989 in Reading, UK, Slowdive represents a more spacey shoegaze sound that is closer to dream pop than punk and noise rock. In 1993, Slowdive released their second studio album, Souvlaki, with influences of Joy Division and David Bowie's album Low. Souvlaki later becomes a shoegaze classic. Souvlaki Space Station, a song layered with delays. New house that took influence from Aphex Twin, dub, and early drum and bass, creating a woozy, hypnotic atmosphere. Dagger, a vulnerable acoustic tune of Neil Halstead, mourning his breakup with Rachel Goswell of Slowdive. Although critics at the time didn't like the record, even writing it as soulless void, Souvlaki has stood the test of time and has found a larger audience in the 21st century. Souvlaki's similar sounds could be found in many later dream pop, bedroom pop bands that the sensitive teenagers rave about today. As of 2022, My Bloody Valentine, Rise, and Slowdive have become shoegaze representative 3 bands, but there are many great shoegaze bands back in the days. Pale Saints were a dream pop shoegaze band from Leeds, UK. They were formed in 1987 and disbanded in 1994. They have released three albums: The Comfort of Madness, In Ribbons, and Slow Buildings, under the famous label 4AD. Recommended songs: Side of You, A Thousand Stars Burst Open, Half-Life Remembered. Lush, formed in 1987 in London, feature feathery melodies and airy singing over feedback-drenched pop. Chapter House, blending neo-psychedelia, indie pop, and shoegaze elements all together. Some other UK shoegaze bands were The Telescopes, Swerve Driver, Catherine Will, Curve, Moose, The Boo Radleys, Flying Saucer Attack, and The Verve's first album, A Storm in Heaven. In America, there were Swirlies, The Brian Johnston Massacre, Mercury Rev, Madison, Lilies, Bartle Pond. Some alternative rock bands like Smashing Pumpkins also incorporated shoegaze elements in their songs. By mid-90s, Britpop and grunge were the main spotlights, and the British press decided to slate the shoegaze genre, contributing to shoegaze's downfall. Some critics belittled shoegaze as faceless, overprivileged, and self-indulgent. Compared to grunge and Britpop, shoegaze was more effeminate, less radio-friendly, and didn't have as much as social impact. Slowdive were dropped by Creation Records 1 week after releasing the album Pygmalion in 1985. Slowdive broke up soon after. Neil Halstead and Rachel Goswell went on to form the band Mojave 3. In 1996, Ride broke up. Andy Bell of Ride later became the bassist of Oasis in 1999. After Loveless, Kevin Shields was having some writer's block and could not release another full-length album, despite having recorded quite some songs. In 1997, My Bloody Valentine broke up. By the end of the 90s, shoegaze bands had either disbanded or changed their style, such as to Britpop. Damon Albarn of Blur remarked, "Bands like Chapter House, Ride, and Slowdive had a wonderful pubescent quality. They were sort of the end of indie, a combination. It had nowhere else to go." Mogwai's George Braithwaite said, "The weird thing isn't that shoegazing got unpopular. It was that it ever got popular in the first place." Into the 21st century, some bands have taken influences of the shoegaze from the last century and incorporated shoegaze with other genres and contemporary sounds. These bands are sometimes labeled as newgaze. For example, the German electronic musician Ulrich Schnells, blending techno with shoegaze. There is another term called blackgaze, blending black metal and shoegaze, such as the band Elsatz and Death Heaven. In the fashion world, there is a rule called the 20-year rule. It means the trend would become fashionable, passes, and then come back again 20 years later. This 20-year rule applies to deco, television, and of course, music too. In 2008, My Bloody Valentine reunited and started touring again. In 2013, My Bloody Valentine finally released their third studio album, MBV, 22 years after Loveless. Kevin Shields once said he would not make a record unless it's as good as Loveless. Personally, I like the album MBV a lot. I think it's a little bit overlooked. Yes, an overlooked My Bloody Valentine album. In 2014 and 2015, Ride, Slowdive, and Lush also reunited and released new music several years later. The listeners of these bands are not just their old fans. They have also found a new audience among the millennials and Gen Z. The hazy, distorted sound and aching melancholy speak a language that the younger generation will be interested in. Some new shoegaze bands have also appeared, starting around mid-2000s, such as A Sunny Day in Glasgow, The Pains of Being Pure at Heart, Ringo Death Star, Candy Clouds, Nothing, and Dive, The list goes on. Lost in Translation, a movie from 2003, directed by Sofia Coppola, is about a story between an older man and a younger woman feeling alone in Tokyo, Japan. Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine composed 4 songs in the soundtrack. The My Bloody Valentine song sometimes features in the movie against the juxtaposition of the hyper-modern architecture of Tokyo, with its bright neon and cinematic bouquet lighting. The wash of guitar noise goes along with the character's alienation in a foreign metropolis. Shoegaze also has a following in Asia, and a bunch of Asian shoegaze bands have emerged. In Japan, there are Tokyo Shoegazer, Kinoku Teikoku, My Dead Girlfriend, She, Her, Hers, Broken Little Sister, and many others. In China and Taiwan, there are Defaults, Forsaken Autumn, Pocari Sweet, and Manic Sheep, etc. A lot of these bands sound kind of sweet and soft, like mixing the C86 indie pop and influences of My Bloody Valentine. Maybe because I also live in Asia, I have a certain geographical affinity to Asian shoegaze. Like I can apply the background music into what I see in real life easily. Also, I think a lot of them could be like a soundtrack of Lost in Translation or some Wong Kar-wai music. I guess shoegaze as a genre fits Asian people in some ways, as we are also more emotionally reserved. If you are interested in Asian shoegaze, there's a YouTube channel called Asian Shoegaze, where you can check out Asian shoegaze albums, and there are also a couple of Asian shoegaze compilation albums and playlists. I will link in the description box where you can check it out if you're interested. In 2013, the Chinese label, Love Label, hosted the first East Asia Shoegaze Festival in Shanghai, China. And this East Asia Shoegaze Festival has been hosted 6 times now. The Guardian once featured an article on the East Asia shoegaze scene in 2017. If you're interested, you can check it out. Okay, so that's it for today's video. And if you like the video, please give a like button down below. And you also can share your thoughts in the comment section down below as well. I'm happy to discuss. And subscribe for more videos if you want to. Okay, at the end, stare at your shoes for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. You'll be having the best of luck and a beautiful day. Congratulations. Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Shoes. They've been the objects of fetish and fantasy for centuries.
They're just shoes.
Don't you step on my blue suede shoe.
These boots are made for